If you look at Chile on a map, it's just this incredible land of extremes and, well, incredible energy potential.
It really
You
is.
have the Atacama Desert in the north, which has, I mean, the best solar irradiation anywhere on the planet. And then you go all the way south to Patagonia, and you have these amazing, consistent wind resources.
And yet, historically, there's been this huge disconnect.
A huge one. I was looking at the numbers. Back in 2017, something like 68% of its total primary energy supply was still fossil fuels.
Exactly. And that massive gap, between the potential and the reality is what makes this so fascinating.
It's the perfect setup for our deep dive today.
It is. Our mission here is to look at some groundbreaking research that asks a really big question. It's not just if a country can do it, but how.
Right.
Can you transition your entire economy? And we mean everything.
Sure.
Power, heat, transport, and even water desalination, which is critical for Chile to 100% renewables by 2050.
And crucially, what's the cheapest way to do it? That's always the bottom line.
Always.
To get at that, we're focusing on two key sources. The first is a foundational study from 2020. It's got a long title, but it lays everything out. Transition toward a fully renewable-based energy system in Chile by 2050 across power, heat, transport, and desalination sectors.
We'll just call that this study to keep it simple.
And then we'll compare it with a follow-up from 2021 called The Impact of Renewable Energy and Sector Coupling on the Pathway Towards a Sustainable Energy System in Chile.
Which we'll refer to as the later study.
Okay, so before we get into all the mechanics, the nitty-gritty of it, let's just drop the big headline finding from that first 2020 study.
Absolutely, because it's a real jaw-dropper, for policymakers everywhere. The research projects that moving to a 100% renewable system isn't just technically possible.
Which is already a huge claim.
It is, but it's also projected to be more cost-efficient than the existing fossil fuel-dependent system.
Okay, stop there. So it's actually cheaper to build this brand new massive system than to just maintain the old one.
That's what the model shows. You achieve energy independence and you cut costs. I mean, that's the economic driver for this whole thing.
All right, let's unpack how that's even possible, because the study hinges on this idea of massive electrification. What does that actually mean in terms of, the sheer numbers?
It means the numbers have to get very, very big. The primary electricity demand is modeled to skyrocket. We're talking a 7-fold increase.
7 times.
7 times. It leaps from 31 terawatt hours to a massive 231 terawatt hours by 2050. And that new huge number represents about 78% of the total primary energy demand for the entire country.
That sounds incredibly expensive. I mean, a 7-fold increase in demand, how can a system that big be cheaper overall?
Right, that's the paradox. And the answer is efficiency. It's all about the efficiency gains.
Okay.
So that other 22% of demand is covered by things like renewable heat and biofuels. But the real key, the magic, is that massive electrification replaces incredibly inefficient processes.
Like burning gasoline in a car.
Exactly. Burning gasoline in a car where you lose, 70% of the energy is heat? Or burning gas in a furnace? You replace that with highly efficient electric motors and heat pumps. And because of that, the whole system becomes about 90% more efficient.
So you're not just swapping fuel sources, you're completely redesigning the energy chain to be less wasteful from the ground up.
Precisely. You shift your spending from constantly buying fuel to a big one-time capital investment in the infrastructure.
The solar panels, the wind turbines.
The things that then produce free fuel forever.
Okay, so let's talk about that infrastructure. Who are the heroes here? I'm guessing solar and wind, given Chile's geography?
They are the absolute workhorses. The scale-up is just colossal. Solar PV capacity goes from about 1.1 gigawatts in 2015 to a whopping 43.6 gigawatts by 2050.
Wow, that's a staggering build-out.
It's a national project on a scale we rarely see. And wind follows right behind, going from about 0.8 gigawatts up to nearly 25 gigawatts in the same period.
So by 2050, what's the final split?
By 2050, the model shows solar PV making up 50% of all the installed capacity across all sectors. Wind power is another 28%, so together they are almost 80% of the entire system.
Okay, let's get into sector coupling. Because you can't run a grid on 80% solar and wind without some serious flexibility. How do they model the heat and power sectors working together?
Right, this is where it gets really smart. The total installed capacity for power and heat hits about 47 gigawatts. But what's really interesting is the decentralization.
Meaning not just giant power plants.
Exactly. PV prosumers, so that's homes, businesses generating their own power, they contribute 31% of that capacity. It's an integrated system, not just a top-down one.
And for heating homes and water, here you get off natural gas.
Heat pumps. Heat pumps are the cornerstone, covering 50% of all heating needs by 2050. They're supported by sustainable biomass and some direct electric heating. And of course, to back it all up, you need storage.
A lot of it.
A lot. Batteries, pumped hydro energy storage, thermal energy storage, they're all woven into the system to manage that intermittency.
Okay, now let's shift to transport. You said this was one of the big aha moments in this study.
It really is.
Because the total energy needed for transport actually goes down, even with everyone driving electric cars.
It goes down dramatically. This is such a crucial point. Final energy demand for transport drops from 125 terawatt hours down to about 68.
So it's nearly cut in half. Why?
It's just physics. A combustion engine is maybe 20–30% efficient at turning fuel into motion. The rest is just wasted heat. An electric motor is, upwards of 80 or 90% efficient.
So you just need far less energy to do the same amount of work.
Far less. Even with millions more cars on the road, the total energy bill for getting around is halved. It's a huge systemic saving.
But what about the hard stuff, like long-haul shipping or aviation? You can't just plug in a jumbo jet.
You can't, and that's where indirect electrification comes in. So the model shows 40% of transport demand is met by direct electricity. But the rest is covered by synthetic fuels and hydrogen.
Power to X?
Power to X, or PTX. You use all that cheap, abundant, renewable electricity to create green hydrogen or synthetic methane or ammonia. And those are the fuels that power the ships and planes.
That brings us to water, which, in a place like Chile with the Atacama, is a huge energy consumer because of desalination.
A huge and growing one. With climate change, water stress is expected to rise, so desalination demand goes up. But the great news from this study is that the energy for it can be supplied 100% by renewables.
And it was a pretty even split.
Almost dead even. 51% from solar PV, 49% from wind.
And there was a clever insight there about storage, wasn't there? Something about batteries versus water tanks.
Yes, this is a brilliant example of system flexibility. The model found it's cheaper to use batteries to keep the desalination plants running smoothly and consistently, to increase their full load hours.
By smoothing out the peaks and valleys of the renewables.
Exactly. That's cheaper than just building more desalination capacity and storing the output in giant, expensive water tanks. It's brains over brute force.
Okay, so if you wrap up all the findings from that 2020 study, what was the final economic punchline on the cost of energy?
The levelized cost of energy, the LCOE for the entire integrated system, is projected to fall by about 25%.
Wow.
It goes from 114 euros per megawatt hour in 2015 down to 85 euros by 2050. And that all comes from one simple thing. You eliminate fuel costs. That's the powerful argument for energy independence.
Okay, so now let's bring in the later study from 2021. This one got more granular, right? It divided Chile into zones, used higher demand projections.
It did. It made the model more realistic, dividing Chile into 6 geographical zones and allowing for electricity exchange between them.
And did it confirm the basic idea?
It absolutely confirmed the core thesis: feasibility, cost efficiency, all of it. In fact, it found the 100% renewable path becomes cheaper than the business-as-usual scenario from 2035 onwards. But the main change was it found solar was even more dominant.
How much more?
Significantly more. In the 2021 scenarios, solar PV provides a massive 86% of all electricity generation by 2050.
86%.
And what's just astounding is that even at that incredible scale, Chile would only be using about 10% of its available techno-economic renewable potential.
They have a 90% buffer. That's unbelievable. And what did this mean for their climate goals?
It accelerated them dramatically. The pathways in the later study would allow Chile to hit carbon neutrality by 2030.
2030.
And potentially become a negative emitter, so actually absorbing CO2 by 2035. That is light years ahead of the official government policies, which the study notes are not compatible with a 1.5-degree pathway.
So after all this modeling, what did that later, more refined study identify as the absolute key ingredients for the cheapest possible path?
It really boiled it down to 3 critical enablers. First, solar PV technology, just leaning into that incredible resource. Second, zonal interconnection.
So better transmission lines.
Much better. Strong transmission between the generation zones in the north and the population centers further south. And third, full sectoral integration. That sector coupling we talked about. Those 3 things are the levers for the lowest cost.
So to sum it all up for you listening, Chile's path is defined by 3 things: massive high RE electrification, system flexibility from storage and transmission, and then sustainable PTX fuels for the really tough sectors.
Right. And if you zoom out, this isn't just about Chile. This is a huge geopolitical opportunity. With all that cheap, low-cost solar, Chile could become a global hub,
Not just for mining copper and lithium.
not just for clean raw materials, but for exporting clean energy itself in the form of green hydrogen and other PTX products, all powered by that 86% solar dominance.
The research from transition toward a fully renewable-based energy system in Chile by 2050 across power, heat, transport, and desalination sectors, and its follow-up, the impact of renewable energy and sector coupling on the pathway towards a sustainable energy system in Chile really shows overwhelming technical and economic viability.
It really does.
So if we know that more transmission capacity, connecting the solar powerhouse of the Atacama to the cities, is a key enabler for the cheapest path, it leaves you with a final provocative thought.
Yeah.
If the technology is there and the economic models show it's actually cheaper, what does that tell you about the real barriers that are left? They aren't really technological or financial anymore, are they? There's the political and institutional challenges, the challenge of accelerating grid investment, and crucially, ensure you get the social acceptance for building out all this massive necessary infrastructure.